Yeah, Southern California, back in a few weeks ago. No. That wasn't a terror attack by another Muslim and his Muslim wife. No, that was workplace violence. Now, Tim McVeigh, yeah, that was a terror attack. Okay. But the Tsarnaev brothers, they're white, right? But they weren't American. They were Armenian, and they were Islamic. But they were white, Rod. Caucasian. And they were highly religious. Do you see how they're twisting it? I don't, you want to spend all this money to send your kids to learn crap like this. That's your business, I suppose. But I don't want to hear you or your kid complaining that you're broke because of college tuition cost and the interest rate on the loans. I mean, this is just insanity. How does this stuff even pass? I mean, you got college students that think that, hey, you know what? We need to have different classes. We need to have queer studies. What? Why? What is that going to do for you? If you want to learn about abstract, obscure stuff like that, learn it on your own. Make it a hobby if you want. I don't care. But the last thing I want to see on somebody's resume is what has your classwork been? What was your class or your coursework like in college? Oh, I took queer studies. Queer studies 101 and 201. You know what I would do to somebody? Get the hell out of here. You're an idiot. You know nothing. You're useless to me. And look, frankly, although I am not for the H-1B1 program because it is being abused, highly trained and knowledgeable Americans are losing jobs to H-1B1 candidates, but I understand why they first started this thing, because we have a bunch of idiots that are growing up because we're not teaching them anything. And employers are saying that they're useless. They're going to have to start from scratch. So, you bring in this H-1B1 person and, I don't have to start from scratch to teach them. They already got a basis. They've already got a solid base where, the American youth in their 20s, they don't have it. Their base is built on quicksand. Their coursework is loaded up with, their classes are loaded up with stuff like queer studies and ancient queer theory and, ancient underwater watercolor art, history, that type of stuff. It's useless. And companies are looking for somebody who's useful. They don't have time to fully and completely train somebody who's useless and make them into somebody useful when they can already get somebody who's useful. Again, I understand how the H-1B1 program got started, and that's the reason why it got started. And I do fully know that it is being highly abused now to bring down wages and to get rid of the more highly paid people that tend to be American citizens. But understand that, that the H-1B1 is not just affecting American citizens now, because there's so many people that they're allowing in, that those who came in first, their salaries are now up there. And they're being replaced by lower salaried new H-1B1. You have to, right now, the labor statistics are that 17% of current U.S. jobs are held by legal immigrants. 17%. We've got, 94 million Americans out of the labor force. Yet 17% of the available U.S. jobs that are currently held by an employee are held by a legal immigrant. H-1B1 visas are legal immigrants. Almost 1/5 of the current American workforce is now being held by legal immigrants when we have about 1/5 of the American workforce out of the labor market. See how those numbers correlate? College student today couldn't put those two together. They wouldn't be able to put those two numbers together. They wouldn't be able to correlate and figure something out based on those numbers because they're being told a bunch of bunk that they believe, and when you prove to them the other way, they still want to believe their original way because, hey, their college professor who they idolize couldn't possibly lie to them, right? Couldn't possibly mislead them, right? So in this particular class, the so-called, and I use the term loosely, scholar, the professor, the scholar, made the statement that most often terrorism in this country are committed by white, conservative, and highly religious men. And he said this in front of a class of about 250 students, most of whom were freshmen. 18 and 19-year-olds. Your babies who've just become adult by age only. An 18-year-old's an adult, not mentally. Hell, and frankly, they're really not a full adult physically either. Most people don't stop growing until somewhere between the ages of 21 and 25. I mean, that's what we say. I mean, look at it. Especially with boys. I mean, you got 18, 19-year-old boys, and they look like, they're 12 because they're so rail thin. And then what do we say? Oh, they don't get fat. Well, some of them do get fat, but they don't get fat. But we say they filled out. So naturally, there's more mass that their body grows between the ages of 18 and 25. They're 18, 19 years old, and they're still rail thin. And then all of a sudden, for some reason, they become what we call young men. Their bodies finally catch up to their so-called age. And just look at it. It just happens. It's just a biological happenstance that I've observed. It's the way it is. So even at the age of 18, they're not fully formed adults, functioning adults yet. They're still of the child mindset, just out of high school. They're going to believe just about anything that some real adult who's in a position of teaching and authority over them, they're going to believe anything that they say. So you got some 18-year-old white boy sitting in a class. He's a college freshman, and he's got a 45-year-old college professor looking down at him and telling him, son, you young white boys are the problem. And this is how you're going to fix it. What do you think he's going to say or do? He doesn't know anything about the world. So that little 18-year-old student is going to say, okay, professor, teach us more of what we can possibly do. And then that's how it gets indoctrinated and ingrained in their little minds full of mush. So look, we have these pictures and these audio and these videos that are secretly taken because look, it is amazing how many times you can go into a lecture and one of the things that is adamantly stated, no video recording. I mean, it used to be okay to audio record, for notes reasons. There are a lot of colleges now and a lot of professors that do not or would prefer that you did not bring any recording device in or do not record the lecture in any form. Because they know what they're saying is a bunch of bullshit. And they don't want to be caught saying it. And they don't want to be caught teaching it. Which is why when you have these videos, it's like hidden video. Because they do not want they'll say, well, because, they can show other people and other people will get this education without paying for it. Oh, that's a bunch of bull crap too. Because they can't they're not going to give them a degree if they don't pay for it. It's all about the money, by the way. Big education. Hello. all about the money. Speaking of all about the money, Affordable Care Act. That's right. Are you sick and tired of the constant financial pressures that our government, and including some of our colleges, are repeatedly putting on our hardworking, decent people, decent citizens like yourselves? Anybody who's listening to this program, because you're listening, you must be a decent citizen. You must be a hardworking, because, lazy roustabouts aren't going to listen to this. We're not going to listen. So decent, hardworking people like you're the ones that are listening, and you're the ones that are suffering and having to pay all these high bills, including the high bill for the Affordable Care Act. Now, just got to tell you that StopObamacareTaxNow.com feels your pain. They've heard all the horror stories surrounding the Affordable Care Act, and when you actually look at the facts that I talk about constantly here, when you look at the facts about the Affordable Care Act, a.k.a. the Obamacare Act, a.k.a. Romney Care, a.k.a. Hillary Rodham Clinton Care, the numbers just don't add up. They don't add up. No, people are losing their coverage that they thought that they were going to get to keep. They're losing their doctors that they thought they were going to get to keep. They're finding that their premiums are jumping, sometimes 50, 100% at a time. They're finding that their deductibles are jumping, 50, 100% at a time. They're doubling like almost overnight. And people are just complaining, but they have nowhere to go, so they think, because if they don't have health coverage through this Affordable Care Act, they're going to get a fine from the government. And so they think that they're caught between a rock and a hard place. Well, I'm here to tell you that if you go to www.stopobamacaretaxnow.com, you can find out how you don't have to be a victim to Obamacare. That's right, www.stopobamacaretaxnow.com, and see if you can relieve yourself from some of this stress that our government is placing upon you. It's worth a shot, worth checking out. www.stopobamacaretaxnow.com. And maybe you can get some relief. I'm hoping so. I really hope that you do, because how awful is it to be stuck with that kind of stuff? But in any case, you're also stuck with the fact that you're sending your kid to a college that's teaching them to hate the American way of life. That's just the truth, folks. That's the truth. And I don't know how you would say that when you look at what's actually happening and the actual terrorist attacks, and you're going to say that it's mostly conservative, highly religious men, how misleading is that? But this is the kind of stuff that's being taught in our classes. Kind of like, by the way, this is a story out of, it's from WND, but this is the time of year when people go to the gym because they have all these wonderful New Year's resolution. Well, this is from WND.com. Planet Fitness. Well, the title of the piece is Planet Freakness. Planet Fitness. Woman sounds alarm on a man in the woman's showers, but the woman gets the boot. And they're saying, this is coming from Planet Fitness, the woman got the boot because she refused to submit to the health club's judgment-free zone. So now it's judgment. You have to be if you find a man in the woman's shower room, I guess the women are just supposed to accept it, because otherwise you're passing judgment, and this is a judgment-free zone. What's going to be next at Planet Fitness? Really? Is it going to be orgies? After all, orgies in the locker room, you can't complain, because that would be passing judgment, would it not? Yeah, we'll be back.